believe in this track he's using the Poly 6 Fatline bass. Many of you know that preset. This is a preset that's used a lot in synthwave music. The arrangement of this track is absolutely gorgeous. It's this nice long form arrangement, and the interesting thing with the Fatline bass line is that he's applying some, I guess you can call it some downsampling and some bit crushing, so it doesn't sound like the typical Fatline bass that we've come to appreciate. The Fatline bass preset never sounded so good. Hello there, fellow synthwavers. Julian here from SynthwavePro.com. Welcome to the Synthwave Pro Music Spotlight. So today we're going to focus on 5 artists and deep dive into some of their tracks. Be sure to listen to the podcast on Spotify. This includes not only commentary, but also the songs that will be discussed. Also available is the ever-growing playlist that features some of the artists we've already covered. So be sure to check that out. The links are in the description. Now, without further ado, let's get started. First artist today is Scandroid. I'm a huge fan of Clayton, aka Scandroid. I want to talk about his immersive audio experience, in part due to his sci-fi lyrics and of course his artwork. So his artwork and his music, it's almost like watching a sci-fi manga. Let's deep dive into 2 of his songs. Let's start off with the Salvation Code. Many of you know that song. So one of the key moments in this track is how he layers his vocals with that of female vocals. I think it's a really nice touch. Also, the use of mechanical sounds in the introduction reminds me of the Transformers. Now, if you grew up in the 80s, you definitely remember that sound the Transformers make. I find that that introduction part reminds me a little bit of that. This is an ingenious way of setting the stage of what is ultimately a synthwave anthem. I feel as if the Salvation Code paints the picture of a truly dystopian future, one where humans and cyborgs become one. For instance, there are moments in the song where the human voice is indistinguishable from that of the cyborg. So it's almost like they're layered together, fused together. Perhaps this is the beginning of the singularity. Anyways, let's not go there. Let's move on to the second song. The second song of Scandroid is called Writings on the Wall. This is taken from the Darkness and the Light album. Now, the first time I heard this track, I was quite smitten as to how Scandroid paid homage to a very popular 1980s soundtrack. If you know the track I'm referring to, please leave a comment below. I'll even give you a hint, a bit of an Easter egg. The riff starts at 8 seconds into the introduction. If you know the track he's referencing, leave a comment down below. So let's talk a little more about the vocals in the Writings on the Wall. In this song, Scandroid reminds me a lot of David Gahan's vocals. That would be the singer to Depeche Mode. And he also has some inflections where he does sound a lot like Simon Le Bon. That happens to be the vocalist to Duran Duran. Now, if you're not into vocals or synthwave vocals, you can always check out his instrumental versions to those songs. Go ahead and use the link in the description. And let's move on to our second artist. Second artist here is a collab between Downtown Binary and FRM. The song in question is called Umbra. Many of you probably know what I'm talking about. Now, this is taken from a 2020 EP by the same name. The track is absolutely golden. I mean, while most would argue that it's not entirely a synthwave song, it's sort of bordering on the progressive house, I decided to include it just because it's such a beautiful song. Firstly, I love how they introduce this cheeky little sample. It sounds like an astronaut in space, and that sort of sets the tone for the entire vibe of the track. The melody is hauntingly gorgeous, so go ahead and check this out, and I promise you, you will not be able to get the melody out of your head. Now, I love the way they weave the melody in and out of the production using some simple filtering as well as some volume automation. So if you want to know how to do those kinds of things, I urge you to check that out so you can sort of, steal that technique and apply it to your own production. The drum work, despite it being a sort of 4 on the floor kick drum, snare, kick, snare pattern, they also have this backbeat in there. And I think the backbeat is what adds so much to the song. It adds some texture and some rhythm. It successfully manages to push the song forward. So go ahead and check that out. The link is in the description and the song is called Umbra. Our third artist here on the list is ToneBox, and we are talking about the track called Warp Drive. Warp Drive is taken from the 2016 album titled Nocturne, and it's comprised of 12 songs. I believe in this track he's using the Poly 6 Fatline bass. Many of you know that preset. This is a preset that's used a lot in synthwave music. I had done a whole tutorial on this. I'll be sure to link that up in the cards if you want to have a listen. The arrangement of this track is absolutely gorgeous. It's this nice long form arrangement, and the interesting thing with the fat line bass line is that he's applying some, I guess you can call it some downsampling and some bit crushing, so it doesn't sound like the typical fat line bass that we've come to appreciate. The fat line bass preset never sounded so good. Speaking of which, let's move on to the fourth artist. Now, the fourth artist on the list here is Martin Roth. I'm sure you guys know exactly what song I'm referring to. That would be Synth City. This is a single released in 2022 with close to 1 million streams on Spotify. The track is quickly becoming a synthwave anthem. I think the track is absolutely beautiful, and Martin Roth really shines here. He really shows us that using a few simple chords along with the right bass line, that's all that's needed to create something really magical. Don't quote me on this, but I believe a lot of the synth work on Synth City was done using the Poly 6. Let's move on to our next artist. All right, so our fifth artist on the list is Vic, or VIQ. I'm gonna go ahead and call him Vic, and if I do mispronounce his artistic name, I do apologize. But nonetheless, this was a submission from one of our subscribers here, so Lost Reverb, thank you, my man, for sharing such a talented artist. Let's go ahead and deep dive into two of his songs. Firstly, his name is Julien Pantier, better known as Vic, and he's a producer coming from France. Let's start off with a song called Last Path. This soundtrack has a phenomenal introduction. I really like soundtracks that have a nice lush introduction. There's a nice downsampling effect applied to the lead line, and it's done in such a creative way that it forces your ear to really latch on to that melody. So that's a great production tip there. I feel like in this track, his sound is reminiscent of hotel pools, maybe a distant cousin, if you will, but he definitely has his very own sound. I believe he's a guitar player, a bassist, and he uses a combination of analog as well as digital components to write his music. The track is atmospheric and has a ton of nuance in there. So if you're going to go ahead and listen to this, please use some headphones so you can fully appreciate the full audio experience. Let's move on to a second track of his. The track is called With Me. Now, I love the vintage old school sound in this track, not to mention the amount of detuning that we have going on. I had done a tutorial on this. I'll be sure to link this in the card. I like how he takes a simple drum pattern and adds a little variety to it by altering the snare hits using reverbs. Again, I had done another tutorial on this. I'll be sure to link this up in the cards. Let's talk a little bit about some of the merch he has going on. Now, a few of you have told me that you collect vinyls, and the cool thing is that Vic has some vinyls on his website, one of which is called Coastline. I believe it is a release that consists of 6 songs plus 2 bonus soundtrack. I'll be sure to include links to his YouTube page, his website, and his merch store down below in the description. And also do check out his songs on the SynthwavePro music playlist. Leave a comment below. Let me know which artists you've been following, or perhaps you have a number of songs on rotation. Be sure to use the comment box below. You can listen to this podcast on Spotify. It's a good blend of commentary as well as the music that we're talking about. Unfortunately, I can't play that music here on YouTube, but you can definitely enjoy the audio experience over at Spotify. The links are in the description. With that being said, guys, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.